Once again, you guys will have to let me know if the audio is okay. Frame rate's a little choppy. Yeah, I noticed that it just looks terrible in the stream, but it's, you know, it's running fine on my end. I don't really know how to. I guess I can try limiting the frame rate a bit again. Weird. Hey, what's up, dude? I can't pronounce names. Guilherme? I'm sorry. And hey, what's up? Bassa Forte? How you guys doing? Looks a bit smoother now? Okay. I'll keep it how it is now. Hopefully I can eventually figure that out. I don't know why it looks so like stuttery in the stream, but I don't know. Hey, what's up, DXO gamers? What's up, Matthew Townley? Thanks for joining, guys. So yeah, this stream I'm mainly going to be showing off the new reflections that I've been working on. And of course it'll be, you know, Q&A as well. So if you guys like have any specific questions about the reflections themselves, like in how that's going or whatever, and then any other questions too is totally fine. And there's already a couple here, so any possibility of mods for other games? I mess around with other games occasionally, but none of them ever really certainly don't you know, grow to this level as this has, but hello Internet Dinosaur, hello Japanese or Korean? Language I don't recognize. Yeah, so GI is still in here. I'm just working on reflections on, you know, on top of that. So the GI is still there, as you can see. Korean, okay, yeah. I thought it looked Korean, but I'm not. I wasn't sure. I grew up playing your mod pack back in the day, looking great so far. Thank you. I can't believe it's been so long. It's insane. Hey, what's up, Fabian? Yeah, so right now I have everything forced to be a particular roughness or smoothness. Just, you know, I guess for testing and to make it a little more clear what's going on here. RTX on, yeah. Alright, so obviously the coolest thing about this is being able to look down and not having the reflections disappear, which is really trippy after, you know, after you've gotten used to screen space reflections for so long. being able to see like the scene reflected here. It's very cool, I think. Glossy. Yep, definitely looks quite slippery. So how does this work? So I don't know if you're sort of up to date on everything I've been working on, but basically I've been working on diffuse global illumination, and the first step to that really is getting world data on like what blocks are there and a couple bits of information about about the blocks that are in the scene, and then you can basically trace through that data. And the tracing I'm doing for the specular reflections is pretty similar to what I'm doing for the diffuse. It was actually like initially just a copy paste and then a couple little tweaks. Like for example, let me grab something that doesn't have a normal map on it. That doesn't really... Okay. Where am I? And if I stand in the right place... Oh, that's funny. Okay. I didn't notice that before. So I was gonna say one of the things that I added was rendering the textures of the reflected blocks, but it looks like it's rendering the default Minecraft textures instead of the resource pack textures. So that's an interesting little bug. Yeah, diffuse is in Lambertian. Yeah. This is LP photorealism, but it's quite highly customized by myself. Yeah, let me make this window a little bigger so I don't make sure I don't miss any chat. Okay. So what frame rate is this running at? I have it capped at 40. So if I unlimit it, it's not great right now. This is about 1080p. It's a 1440p window at render quality 0.7x, so that works out to about 1080p. And this is a GTX 1080 that it's running on. So yeah, it definitely needs to be optimized. This is really just like pretty early work on reflections right now, so. Is it true that there's no reasonable way of using ray tracing cores for Minecraft? Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define reasonable. I mean, I would call it unreasonable, the amount of work that would be required to do that. Can I show water? I actually don't quite have water working yet. I'm still kind of working out how I'm going to set up, I guess, an additional transparent material ID, and then the additional data needed for that. Like for stained glass, you need the obviously like the albedo texture, the color of the stained glass to absorb light properly, and then for water, I need to know specifically if it's water to do some specific shading on it. But all this reflection work is in preparation for bringing stained glass and water, because, yeah, I mean, especially in terms of water, like, why bring those things in if I'm not going to have reflections? And I could have just used screen space reflections, but when we have all this lovely world space data, why wouldn't I, work on the reflections? So this is all really just work in preparation for getting those two things in. And then, of course, the added benefit, the bonus, is that you get reflections on everything if you so choose. So yeah. So let me show you what this is going to look like at different roughness values here. So first I'll do mirror-like. I know this doesn't look too different with the normal maps, but here, let me actually switch just to default here. Alright. So, these are the mirror-like reflections. There are a couple things missing and or simplified in the reflected world. Like torches are just a glowing block currently. I don't have any non-full cube blocks really yet, so fences aren't showing up in reflections yet. Any of those things that I'm not able to get in world space data, I will be able to supplement with a bit of screen space tracing. So like for example, tall grass. There's actually not much around here. Here we go. You know, those aren't really captured in the world data, so some screen space tracing will help ground those things. And then also for entities, like mobs and players and things, I definitely won't be able to represent those in the world space data, so screen space tracing will sort of help tie them into everything. So then let me just, for the sake of demonstration, increase the, like, I guess index of refraction so everything's really reflective. So yeah, a couple bugs right now. You can see the leaf texture is not like there's no alpha test on it. To be honest, I expect the alpha test to be quite expensive, so I might not even bother with that. And then also the color of the leaves themselves is too dark, and I know why that's happening. I just don't really have a workaround yet for it. But let me go to this other area here. Soon enough we'll need mega scan materials for the voxels. How much of this is pre-processing? This is all fully dynamic. All the voxelization, all the lighting, yeah, everything is fully dynamic. So let me show you guys a couple different roughness values here. Hey Josh, what's up? So I'll reduce that a bit. So here we go, here's some glossier reflections. What card is this running on? This is running on a GTX 1080. And yeah, frame rate's not great. Oh, you know what? I gotta limit it back to 40. Okay, that should look a little better in the stream. For some reason, if I don't cap my frame rate, the stream just looks incredibly choppy. But yeah, it's running around 50 FPS. But again, there's a lot of optimization to be done. This is very early stage right now. Okay, so let me okay, so this is a little more realistic base reflectivity. So you can see the glossy reflections look pretty decent. I'm doing my best to come up with a denoising pass. And it's not perfect because I don't get a... Right now I haven't really made room in the memory to dedicate a render texture just to the reflections. So I can't like do a specified temporal accumulation like I do with the diffuse lighting. I'm having to rely basically just on the temporal anti-aliasing. So it's a bit of a challenge right now, but I don't think it looks too bad. Alright. Let me catch up on chat here. Is it possible to implement procedural generation of normal maps and roughness maps from diffuse textures? Yeah, I definitely wanna bring that in to this version. For those of you who didn't know, I have a like sort of auto, normal, and specular map generation feature in one of the other branches of SEUS. But yeah, I do plan on bringing that into this version. I just haven't bothered yet. Okay, what's next? Voxelization is on the GPU. How does that work? Is it fast? Updated every frame? It's updated every frame, and I'm basically hijacking the shadow pass that's going on, and it's leveraging the fact that Minecraft is pretty much already a voxel world. So yeah, it's updated every frame. As far as how fast it is, I mean, I haven't really bothered benchmarking it too much because, I mean, it needs to happen for these features, so. So I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think it's terribly expensive. Because like I said, Minecraft is already a blocky world, so there's nothing really crazy going on. Has Mojang ever contacted you for help? I heard they were struggling making their own, or their official shader pack. As far as I know, have not been contacted. And I believe that is Microsoft working on that. But I could be wrong, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's definitely gone past the expected release date, so they must be having some issues, but yeah, I haven't heard anything. Is the majority of the cost the denoiser? The denoiser is pretty hefty right now. Let me actually. No, that'll take a while to undo. I was gonna remove the denoiser and show the performance difference, but what I can do actually is reduce the spread of the denoiser to 0. That will remove most of the cost, so we can get a bit of an idea of what the cost of the denoising is. So let me load the whole scene, look in a direction, and what do we got here? Unkept the frame rate. So 57. Again, this isn't all the cost gone, but gives us a basic idea. And then load the whole scene, look in the same direction. 52. Yeah, it's a pretty hefty cost. Obviously, a lot of the cost is also coming from the reflection tracing itself, especially when it comes to like jittering. Excuse me. Jittering the reflections. Okay, can't imagine my 1050 Ti running this. Yeah. Probably not great. I would shoot for 1080p, and maybe you'd get 30 FPS. Okay. Will the roughness change with different materials? Yeah. So the roughness will be defined by the specular maps of the resource pack. Again, right now I have it just forcing a specific value just for testing. But yeah, it will be texture driven. Does it have ambient occlusion too? Actually, it doesn't really need ambient occlusion because the diffuse lighting is already path traced, which is, you know, which transcends the need for ambient occlusion. Because you always get accurate lighting everywhere. So, there is an option. I could, like, you know, for a little add-on, add some extra ambient occlusion, but I really don't think it's needed. Okay. catching up here too. What in Minecraft makes SEUS even possible? Is it, or it's so impressive it almost looks impossible. Yeah, I mean this is really just honestly all thanks to the original creator of the shaders mod, Dex Nitro, way back in late 2011 or early 2012. And then, you know, that was sort of passed on to various people. Right now it's managed by the developer of Optifine. And those of you who are up to date with it, you know, it's all integrated with Optifine now, which is pretty nice. And he does really, really great work. Seriously, fantastic work. So, I know I couldn't even begin to, like, fathom the complexity of the work that he does, so I'm definitely not much of a CPU programmer. Let me catch up here. What do you store in the voxels? How big is the texture? So, right now, I've got the texture, it's around 161 in all directions, 161 cubed. You know, obviously increasing that is gonna not only increase memory, but increase the cost of sampling or tracing through this data. So yeah, that's the current resolution, and the I do have to store like base texture coordinates to be able to render hello to be able to render textures onto the reflected scene. And then I'm also doing average texture color, just for a simple approximation for the light bouncing for the global illumination. So you have a 960 and it runs very well. Oh, that's good to hear. Do you have a GLSL version of your Natural Bloom asset for Unity? I don't, but the bloom that I'm using in it isn't too different than what I'm doing here for SEUS, and that's GLSL, so you can take a look at that and maybe get some inspiration for that. But basically it's a bunch of it's like a hierarchy of Gaussian blurs. So like you do it at full resolution, then you do it at half resolution, then quarter, then eighth, and so on. Like almost like a binary tree of blurs. And then you add them all up and choose the weights to make it look pretty, and then you have nice bloom. So, will the clouds affect the sun's brightness? Yeah, eventually they will. As you can see, they're pretty bugged right now. I haven't haven't really bothered fixing them yet, since it'll be a simple fix when I get to it, but I've really just been focusing on the reflections. And actually, while I'm at that, let me reduce the smoothness a little further so you can see what that might look like. Let's go back to this. Whoops. This little area here. Okay, so you're starting to see some of the noise coming back in here with a bit of sort of flickering. Yeah, like I said, I still have a lot of work to do on this. I worked on the diffuse lighting denoiser for a long time, and I've just begun with this one, so. And then I'll show you even less smoothness. So now it's really starting to have a matte look to it. And yeah, you can see the denoiser really starts to struggle with these high roughness values. And then maximum roughness looks like this. So just really just a hint of reflections. So I'll bump that back up to a nice shiny level, because it's pretty. Alright, let me catch up here. Is the SEUS lighting publicly available yet, or will this all be coming together? So yeah, these have all been experimental builds, experimental versions, that I don't feel quite comfortable having it publicly available. If you guys don't know, I have a Patreon page, and you can get access to experimental through that. But yes, this is definitely a step towards a public release. Obviously, I need water for it to be playable. This is I'm putting a lot of focus on getting this gameplay ready right now, and you need water for it to be gameplay ready. And in order to have water, you should probably have reflections, and you know, yeah. So this is definitely on the road to a public version that is nice and playable, and might not run super well, but it'll be a separate version of SEUS. So. Okay, let's see. Hey there, what about the new texture setup you and Joey set up? He's been using that with Continuum 2.0. Would be neat to see that as an option with your shaders. I think you're referring to like various channels for smoothness and things like that. Like, I guess mainly specular. I think we decided on an emissive channel as well. Yeah, I'll definitely have to go back to that. Right now I've just been kind of settling on, you know, what I have been using. But yeah, I agree it would really be a nice option to basically, if someone has like a Continuum compatible resource pack, to be able to support, you know, the same format or layout for the texture maps. So yeah, definitely. Hey, Lexi, what's up? How are you going to handle digging deep down if the volume size isn't the full height of a chunk? So the volume size is relative to where the player is. So as you move down, you know, the volume size is going to move down with it. But of course, that does have the issue of, like, if you have a very large cave, and let's say you move to the bottom of that cave, you know, the top of the cave is going to be cut off, and then it's going to think that it's sky, and then a bunch of light's going to come through. So yeah, that's definitely an issue. I am looking into what I can do as far as packing more data into the texture I have available, although that is pretty tricky to do because I don't have unordered access views or anything like that. So, but I have a couple ideas. Coding stream? Maybe. I think I tried that once and it really just didn't go well because I can't talk and code at the same time. If I remember correctly, you talked about infinite bounces in the last Q&A, but when I think of an endless for loop, can you explain how two infinite bounces work? Yeah, so basically, I guess technically a better word would be unlimited. I mean, nothing in, you know, in this context is going to be truly infinite, but basically it's like you said, like an infinite for loop, but it's spread across time. So it's a feedback loop across time where you calculate the bounce, like one bounce for the current frame, and then whatever bounce was calculated there goes into the next frame, and so then that becomes 2 bounces, and then it becomes 3 bounces, and so it does it across time. And so over time it's able to accumulate essentially infinite bounces. But yeah, I think a better word for that would be unlimited rather than infinite. Thanks for all the questions, guys. I'm sorry I'm not, like, you know, super on top of it. I'm trying to get through all of them though. Making water have a ripple effect when you move through it, is it a possibility? That might be pretty tough with the data that we have to work with. We being the shader pack developers, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. It's something I'd have to really sit down and think about. Are you doing anything to combat the effects that screen space reflections have when an object is not fully visible by the camera? So I guess you might have just joined in, or maybe you're talking about earlier when I was talking about using screen space reflections to supplement the data that isn't there. But I mean, the reflections that you're seeing right now are not screen space. So, and then as far as the screen space reflections, in addition, like to capture the, you know, what is that called? Grass. You know, that's gonna have the good old classic limitations, but most of what's here is transcending the screen space, which is really nice. Can you make a pinhole camera? The cave entrance looked like it. Oh, you know what? I bet you could make a bit of a pinhole camera, although it would be super noisy and temporally unstable and not pretty, because we just don't have that many samples that we're working with here. But yeah, you could do a pinhole camera, which is kind of interesting. RTX reflections recommended tracing mirror reflection and then store the distance of each ray, then using that data for blurring to get contact reflections. Yeah, so actually, Lexi, I'm kind of doing a bit of a combination of that right now. So if I disable the... what file is that in? The jittering. Where am I? Oops. Oh my goodness. Okay, so, and then let me put a timer on the filter. Sorry guys, just give me a sec. Okay, so now the filter should be turning on and off. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so I already have that sort of approach happening right now. But I noticed that it really tends to break down. Yeah, so you can see the contact hardening there. I know it's a little hard to see because this block is pretty bright. Yeah, there we go. It really tends to break down for surfaces with normal maps, or for like small areas of the blocks. Like if there was a single block pretty far away, you know, it basically needs a large area to sample from. So if I increase the filter size, I think you'll start to see some of those issues. Okay, maybe that's not quite enough. Is it? Hello? Oh, right. I'm clamping that somewhere. Give me a sec, sorry. Let me just increase this directly. Okay, that's not quite enough, but basically I can show you what I mean. And I'm sure you could gather, but so keep an eye on this reflection here. And if it moves out of the screen, it just poofs. And that gets really compounded with the filter size, which obviously you would need for rougher reflections. So basically I'm doing this kind of filter in addition to a little bit of jittering to try to I guess get the best of both worlds. But as you can see, it's not the best solution. Okay, let me just reset everything here. And there we go, and get rid of this and this. Sorry about this, guys. Okay, there we are. Alright. You sound like a faggot. Well, you wouldn't be wrong. Let's see, let me catch up here. When tracing the reflections, is it jitter because of the resolution of the reflections? Basically, we have to jitter it in order to get anything but mirror-like reflections. So that's the purpose of that. Oh yeah, no problem, Lexi. Thanks for joining. Alright, let me catch up here. This is not using RTX cores at all. It's just a good old classical shaders. Would it be possible to backport the shader folder onto alpha beta version of this game? I mean, it really all just depends on how far back the Optifine developer decides to go for, I guess, shader mod integration. And I don't really imagine that happening, to be honest. I don't know if there's a huge demand for it. So, it would be really cool, but again, it would be a lot of work, and I don't think there's a huge demand for it, so... Why is the grass so shiny? I've just forced a constant reflection value for everything, just to demonstrate the reflections I've been working on. Let me go to a new area for you guys here. I'm sure it's been fun just staring at that same place. Yay, visual artifacts. Let's see. Yeah, no problem for answering your question. Rays are traced from the pixels on screen. Yeah, basically it's you calculate the world position of a particular pixel, and then you generate a reflection vector, and then you trace in that direction, basically, so. And again, everything being shiny, obviously it's just for demonstration purposes. It's not, I don't think it looks good when everything is shiny. Just to show off the tech, I suppose. What are the maximum amount of reflections you allow for the moment? So I guess maybe you're talking about bounces. So like if a ray hits, traces here, hits a wall, does it continue to trace? It does not. Right now it's just one bounce. So it'll trace the reflection ray, hit whatever it hits, and then return the color of that, and then stop. And that's really just for performance reasons. We can't get too greedy. This is all real time after all, without RTX or anything, so. I've only been here for a few minutes, but will light sources like torches eventually be able to cast shadows? in addition to tracing reflections, I'm also tracing diffuse lighting here. So they actually do cast shadows, although they do not. They're area shadows. They're not sharp shadows, and it's just basically from blocks. So if there was an entity here, it wouldn't be casting shadows. But I mean, it does, in a sense. So you can see here, shadows. I could even put a different. Whoops. Let me make sure I have these enabled, and then I can do some lapis. Yep. So I'm not sure if all you guys have seen this before, but excuse me, hiccups. Catch up on chat here, guys. So I guess a couple of you guys haven't seen this yet, so yeah. I'll do some redstone here. There we go. So yeah, pretty cool stuff, I think. Yeah, if you don't like any of this stuff, you can always just use the version of SEUS without all this. Yeah, there are a couple toggles currently. Obviously, I want to make it as customizable as possible. If people don't want, for example, if you don't want reflections, you could turn them off. If you don't want glowing lapis and redstone blocks, you can also turn that off. That's actually already in there. Whoops. Yeah, so I've got options for those things. So, when it's public ready, I intend on it having as many customizable settings as possible, so don't worry about that if there's something you don't like. And then, you know, in the future, if there's something you don't like and there isn't an option for it, you can always request for one, so. Kind of mind-blowing seeing this run in real time, thank you. ETA, those of you who know me know I don't like to talk about ETAs, because the best case scenario is you meet it, and worst case scenario is you don't, and people are disappointed. And honestly, ETAs are really hard to meet with this kind of thing, especially when it's so, like, you know, I've never done anything like this before. This is all really just bleeding edge stuff. So it's really pretty much impossible for me to estimate a ETA, so I'd rather surprise you, but do know that I am, like, this is my main focus. How does your lighting solution handle moving light sources such as a sticky piston, moving a glowstone block? I would imagine that, you know how, like, when you push something with a sticky piston, it becomes like a different entity for a moment, and then when it appears in its new position, it just appears. It'll probably look a lot like when you have a light and you remove it and you place it. You can see a couple artifacts here because I'm doing a lot of temporal accumulation here. You gotta cut corners somewhere when it's real time, right? So. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the balance between readability and appeal. So yeah, motion blur is toggleable. Some people like it, some people don't. Motion blur is super divisive, so I definitely made sure to have an option for that. Are you thinking about implementing presets, like for low, medium, high settings? Yeah, I definitely want to do that. So in the past, like the current SEUS renewed, bleh, excuse me, it kind of comes out of the box what I think is the best balance, and then you can go in and disable global illumination or SSAO, or decrease the shadow resolution. And I think those things are kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, having those presets would definitely be a help, especially when it comes to some of the quality setting ideas, excuse me, I have for ray tracing and stuff. And some of those things might not be obvious to some people, in which case it would be nice to have an option. So. Do you have any tips for getting into more advanced graphics programming topics? Can't speak today. Like VXGI. I mean, I would start by skimming through papers, and like, I would definitely recommend not, don't open a paper and dedicate yourself to reading every single paragraph and trying to understand every single equation and things like that. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. A lot of papers will, outline the concepts and diagrams, and so start with those and just work through the concepts and, have it sort of sit in your mind for a while, and once you're ready, you can start diving more into detail in those various papers. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah, so yeah, path tracing is basically utilizing ray tracing. Path tracing is tracing rays, but it's trying to integrate a reflection function by shooting random rays and accumulating the result, which is why there's always inherently noise involved, which is why you need to denoise, which is why we have, temporal artifacts like this, because I'm only tracing one sample per pixel, and those of you with a, like, I guess, offline rendering background will understand just how bad one sample per pixel is for anything, really. So you have to do a lot to denoise that. Will there be a setting for light source intensity? Yes, absolutely. So if you don't like how dim or bright torches are, you can adjust the color of them as well. And I will have, I guess if you want, I'll keep this in if people want to have, glowing redstone and lapis. And right now it's based on the resource pack, but there's no reason I couldn't make it like an adjustable color or intensity. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Have you tried voxel cone tracing? Yeah, I actually worked on a voxel cone tracing solution for a while, for about 1.5 years, maybe a little longer than that. I got really frustrated with the inherent limitations of it. Yeah, light leaking is pretty much unavoidable for voxel cone tracing, which was my main frustration. So, if you had some lights in this room, for example, but the room is totally blocked off, with voxel cone tracing, there would always be some sort of light leaking through the walls, and that was just like a really frustrating limitation that kind of put me off to it. It was something I really, really wanted to fix, but I just I mean, it's just a limitation of the approach, so. Is transparency working? No, not quite, but it will be working. And stained glass will now have reflections on it too, so that'll be a new cool feature. Hey, what's up, Tony? Tony Hornbeck. Thanks for joining. Alright, so I do believe I have a resource pack with a decent amount of specular textures. So I'll load that up and then turn off the forced reflectivity and show you what, you know, what it's looking like for various values based on the specular textures. Go, and there we are. So now the specular textures in this resource pack were developed without this in mind. So some of them are going to look a little weird. Like that here, but like some of them are definitely shinier than they should be. Yeah, exactly. So indoor scenes are particularly difficult for path tracing, both with reflections and with diffuse lighting. So you may have noticed that like these outdoor scenes generally will look more stable than the indoor ones. So yeah, for those of you who were, you know, thinking, oh dude, why is everything just shiny? You know, this will give you an idea of what it would look like when it's texture or material based. And again, some of these are too shiny, but, you know, I think you get the idea. How does rain look? I don't have it set up yet. For this version, I suppose. But I imagine it'll look really cool with, you know, everything being wet. Like if I make this all really specular, you know, not having the limitation of screen space, I think it's going to look really nice. Oh, well, that's an issue. Looks like the texture is a little wrong on here. Oh, you know what? I'm an idiot. I gotta set that value. Hey, there we go. That looks better. Yeah, so no reflections on tall grass or like the torches. It's just a really rough approximation fences, you know, saplings, things like that. I do plan on supplementing that with with screen space tracing. Alright, so I've been streaming for a while. I think I might wrap it up pretty soon, but I really appreciate you guys joining. And I guess let me know if you think I should do more of these. I mean, I set this as like a goal for my Patreon after a certain level, you know? Honestly, I don't know if anyone really cares. So if you guys like it, let me know and, you know, I can do more. But for now, you know, I guess I'm just kind of testing it out. Like you saw in the title, this is just the second one, so. Am I temporarily sampling the reflections or throwing away that data and reconstructing it? They look really good. Thank you. So I'm just kind of relying on temporal anti-aliasing right now to do a lot of the, I guess, temporal stability stuff. Like I said earlier, I'm pretty full on textures to work with here, so I don't have a dedicated temporal reprojection accumulation pass for the reflections. So I do rely on temporal anti-aliasing for a lot of the stability there. And it works pretty well, I think, but I would rather handle it specifically, so. Well, thanks, Meat Safe Murder. Hey, Past Life Pro, what's up, dude? Good to see you. So I think this resource pack has metallic metal, and this map is made all of iron, so... Oh yeah. Whoa. I gotta turn off the glowing lapis. There we go. That's pretty wild. Jeez. I haven't looked at this yet before. That's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks for catching the stream. I was just about to end it, and I will be soon, but find a different area. Yeah, I apologize for the, I guess, long wait on the last public release. It's been a long time. I've been working really hard on mainly this and some other experimental features. So, and I have the tendency to prefer working on these experimental things. So that's why it's been so long. But I mean, this one's coming along, I think, so I can't say when, but, you know, hopefully it'll be not another year. Just one bounce for the reflections. Is it at all possible for reflections to apply to the transparent parts of glass? So the way that glass, like standard glass panes are rendered, I don't know, because they're rendered as if it's an opaque block. So either it's fully opaque or it's fully transparent. I haven't really dove, I guess, too far into that. There might be a way to get around that. But as far as stained glass, yeah, that's absolutely possible, because it's rendered a little differently. Yeah, Mirror's Edge. The game is so beautiful, so that's a big compliment. This is, yeah, R3D Craft. I've customized the normal and specular maps quite a bit, but, yeah. Well, guys, I think I'm gonna sign off here. But thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think I'll be doing another one of these fairly soon. It all just kind of depends. If I don't have anything new to show, then I won't really bother. I'm definitely not going to stick to a weekly schedule, and it might be at different times of day. So. Alright then. Thanks for joining, guys. Have a good night. Bye-bye.